Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what's a crazy idea? I love video games. I love covering video games. I love writing about them. I love talking about them. It's funny. Seems like a lot of people who talk about games these days don't actually like them. But that leads into the topic for today's video. Now, as a kid, I really prided myself on beating any game I ever picked up. It was always one of the things I was always so proud of when my friends would come up to me and be like, wow, you beat that already? Say the game came out 3-4 days earlier. I'd be like, yep, I sure did. Because at the time, I would buy most of the games with my own money, so each one of those games was a significant commitment. And so when I bought it, I was going to get my money's worth. It's funny, I never got much of a completionist mentality out of this, but I did get a finisher's mentality. And really the completionist thing only started being the meta once achievements and trophies and things like that came about, which a lot of those aren't even really things you do in the game as much as weird things that just so happen, like, wow, you blew up 4 guys at once while turning around backwards. Anyways, for today's video, I wanted to focus on games that I gave up on. And we're going to go through just a few of them. I got 8 here. I have several more, and each one of these has a story. So come on, let's take a look. Why did I give up on these games?
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life. This is my game room.
So starting off with the first one, this is the game that always sticks in my memory whenever I think of this particular subject. It really was during the N64 era when I was old enough to have this mentality. N64, PS1 games especially, if I bought them, I beat them. But this was also the era of trying to save money by buying games on eBay. I don't know if you guys are old enough or knew about this. When eBay first came out in the mid-90s, I found that a way to save generally $10 to $20 on average on new releases. This is new releases, mind you. I would buy it on eBay. Now, this is when you would have to send a check or send cash in the mail. There was no PayPal. Sometimes people would just ghost your money. Well, one of the games I picked up this way was Donkey Kong 64. So I picked up Donkey Kong 64 this way, and I want to say it was a month before the thing even came out. So I was sitting there being like, oh my god, I'm going to get this game before it came out, because back then release dates were far less hard. Like, I don't know how, but I got the N64 2 months before launch date, or at least a month before launch date. Still not sure how the hell that happened. I pre-ordered it from some random ass place in the mall that I didn't even, I mean, it was like an importer store or something. I don't even know what it was. I wish I could remember. I was 10. But Donkey Kong 64, I bought this game on eBay, and it took so long to come to me. And this was back when Rare was crushing it. Right before this game would have been GoldenEye and Banjo-Kazooie, and then you have a new Donkey Kong game. Donkey Kong was all the rage. You know, you've been playing with him from Mario Kart. I don't know if Smash Brothers was out or not. I want to say yes. So obviously I was big on this game. And I couldn't wait, so I actually rented it. I rented it from our local video game, or not our local video store. I want to say it was called Foster City Video number 2. And that was after number 1 had shut down. Number 2 was holding on. And so I rented it. And the funny thing is, this game requires the expansion pack, but you can play it without the expansion pack. There's just a bug somewhere. But I don't remember it having the expansion pack. It must have, but I don't remember removing it, the jumper pack, and putting it in. That seems, but anyways, I rented it. And I played a good solid 10, 15 hours or so into it. And then I had to return it. And by that point, finally the copy of my game showed up. And I was playing through a lot of the same portion of the game that I had already previously done. And I'm not sure what happened, but it just lost its appeal. And this always, the DK rap is amazing. I could listen to that on loop all day long. Game-wise, I feel like this is really starting to show where Rare maybe was losing some of its edge. I think the collectibles got a little overdone. Even though there's 5 different characters, it wasn't exciting for me to go through all the levels with each character. It was more cumbersome and burdensome, thinking that, oh my god, I gotta go through each one of these 5 times. And so I just stopped playing it. And that was a first. That was literally a first. At that time, I never, even if I wasn't enjoying the game, which still holds true to this day, I very rarely, even though I got a bunch of games to talk about, I don't stop in the middle of a game, especially not one that I'd been looking forward to. The fact that I rented the damn thing, wanting to play it, but I just stopped playing it. And to this day, I still haven't beaten Donkey Kong 64. And really, whenever I think about games that, you know, I'm just not enjoying it, I don't want to play it anymore, I always think about Donkey Kong 64 and be like, you know what? It's all right. You don't have to beat that game. And it still bothers me. I'll probably do a Hated Gems on it someday. I'd like to beat it, but I really did not enjoy it. And every time I think about it, I just remember that feeling of not enjoying it. And I don't know if it was because I rented it and went through a lot of the same stuff multiple times, but even that's like, wow, what a telling this for the game, that even going through the first opening section, maybe it wasn't 16, maybe it was like 5 or 6, I don't know. Anyways, that starts us off. Now, moving on from that one is another game that probably is going to be surprising to you guys, especially if you've been following the channel for a long time. But this was a 3DS release that I picked up after Link Between Worlds and Fire Emblem Awakening. I figured, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm getting into these handheld games now. Maybe I can finally start playing these. And that game is Bravely Default. Now, I didn't even stop playing this when probably people are assuming I did once. From what I heard, my buddy Sean had beaten this game, and once you beat it, you apparently have to beat it 3 more times to beat the game. Like, that's what a lot of people complain about. From what I know, now bear in mind, I haven't beaten it, but I didn't even get that far. First and foremost, I'm not a fan of the art style. I know people assume I'm some weeb anime lover, but really, other than Fire Emblem, games that look like this do not appeal to me. I love the old, it's funny, I love a lot of the old Super Nintendo and PS1 RPGs because of the game limitations of the art style. They look so good in 16-bit and 32-bit, but when you transfer them into these newer art styles, I'm not as big a fan. I don't know what it is. Just never been into that anime look, and especially these, I mean, it is, I don't enjoy looking like I'm playing a 10-year-old boy or a 17-year-old boy, even though that's the plot of all of these. And even beyond that, the combat system did not appeal to me. I feel like Octopath Traveler, which is made by the same people, mind you, and Octopath's one of my favorite games of all time. They really improved on it because my biggest problem is the Bravely Default system. For those who don't know, when you play in Bravely Default, you have a chance to go bravely where you essentially use extra turns of attack while minusing those turns for later use. So I'll attack 3 times now, and then I won't have an attack for 2 turns. You also have the default system where you can store an attack. So let's say I don't attack now, and then I can attack later. And that's the balancing act you have in that game. I feel like in Octopath, they improved this immensely with the boost system, where you're not forfeiting an attack or storing an attack. You're just using a bonus damage cooldown, almost like a limit break. And I found that much more interesting and much more agreeable, because honestly, in these games where you're grinding so much, the last thing I want to have to do, as much as this sounds stupid, I don't want to think about every single encounter, let alone I don't want to have to purposely not attack. And that's why I never picked up the sequels. And, well, I did pick up the sequel on the Switch, but I haven't played it yet. So who knows? Maybe I'll get to that one day. But yeah, Bravely Default. Another game I gave up on probably 4 or 5 hours in. I did not get far in this game at all. Now, another one that's surprising to me, it's kind of the whole Sega Dreamcast library. I bought that when I was just wanting a new system. The Sega, I've never been a huge Sega fan. I've always felt let down ever since Panic on Funkatron with Toe Jam and Earl. And then the Sega Channel, I did not feel like I ever got my money's worth with Sega, but somehow I fell for the hype. I couldn't wait for the GameCube. It was 2 years off. The PS2 was so far off. The Dreamcast came out in 1999. My buddy David had it, and I'm like, you know what? I'd be down for some Sega. Oh, damn, Dynamite Cop looks good. And then this game was going to be exclusive on it, and this is before I even heard about Resident Evil 3. It was Resident Evil Code Veronica. I wanted to see the continuation of Claire's story. I wanted to play it, but I don't know. Now, this wasn't even a game that I gave up on because I wasn't enjoying it. I don't think. I just stopped playing. I don't know if something better came out. Maybe an N64 game came out, like Winback, something I actually wanted to play and beat. Because that does happen. That does happen. And then when you go back to try and play it later, you're so lost. You just don't know where to start, so, you better start from the beginning. But I just didn't enjoy my time with this. I never liked the Dreamcast controller. I didn't like the Dreamcast memory card. The VMU never appealed to me, and I just never got around to beating this. I got pretty far in it, too. I don't feel like I ever got to where Chris shows up, but I could be wrong. Hey, kitty. Atlas wanted to say hello. But I felt like I got pretty far in it. I just never beat it. And I never picked up the GameCube version. I never picked up the PS2 version. To this day, I still want to beat it. I just didn't. And yeah, that's kind of where that one is. I enjoyed it. It had the good tank controls. I mean, maybe I was getting tired of the Resident Evil formula by now. There's a reason why everyone loved 4 so much. But it just... And I can't even remember if I played it before or after 3. Or if... I don't know. But even though I didn't finish it, still have fond memories of it. It's just one of those ones where, you lose the momentum, and then it's hard to go back. And that's another one for this next game that's very true as well. Now, in the mid-2000s, I was in college. I was heavily into World of Warcraft, but still a big Final Fantasy fan, but I did miss out on 10 because, once again, I got tired of playing games where I looked like a chick. Final Fantasy 11 was an online game, but Final Fantasy 12... I was pretty stoked for because it was supposed to take place in Ivalice. If you notice, I want to say Balthiar, whatever his name is, my buddy Sean again, he would joke that I looked like this guy because I had long hair my sophomore year in college. I want to say in 2005. I had long flowing mane hair, and he would say, "Oh, you kind of look like this character." And of course, he was actually a tough looking male character in a Final Fantasy game for the first time in years. So that had me hyped to play it. But it was no longer turn-based, and it had this interesting gambit system, almost like an MMO where you traverse through the world. And it's another one of those instances where I want to say I was playing this on Christmas break 2005, which, if I recall, was right before I built my computer to play World of Warcraft, I think, or right around the beginning of that. And I want to say I was 20 hours in, but it just never really sank its teeth into me. I wasn't a huge fan of the tables for the talents. The characters never really stuck. The cat girl, I don't know. I'm not into these crazy, furry characters and other crazy Final Fantasy weebness that is present in some, like I said, in Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, because of the graphical style, you don't really notice it as much. But I lost interest in playing it, tried to go back and play it years later, just couldn't. Another one of those instances where it's just, you get so far removed from it, it's almost impossible to go back in the middle of it. I was able to do it this year with Suikoden 2, somehow, because I was playing Suikoden 2 in February of 2022, and then Elden Ring came out, and then Triangle Strategy came out, and then Kirby and the Forgotten Land came out, and I found myself in April or May of 2022 being like, okay, we gotta get back into this. And somehow I managed because it's a lot less complicated. But in these open world games, I don't know what it is. It gets a little overwhelming when you have such a breadth of lands to go through. And I never enjoyed the combat. That's the other thing. And to this day, I still enjoy the combat. I know I've heard a lot of people say it's better than you think. And I know there is a remaster of it that allegedly improves some things. So I'd like to retry it again, but yes, another game ended up on the scrap heap of unfinished games. And like I said, this doesn't happen a lot. I didn't do this a lot. If you look at my collection of games I've played, I want to say I've beaten 80% of them. It's like, I very rarely give up on a game. But this next one is more likely a case of me being too young for the game at the time it came out. And that is 1990's G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. So at this time I was 4 going on 5 when I got this game. Huge fan of the G.I. Joe action figures. My older brother had a bunch of the mid-80s G.I. Joes that luckily I was able to take from him and play with, and some of those I still have to this day. It seemed like a slam dunk. Wow, you love G.I. Joe, you're gonna love the video game. I didn't know how to play it. I expected more Contra, and instead it is it's not as user-friendly as you would think, especially for a 4 or 5-year-old try and play this thing. Like, it's a pretty difficult game. And I just put it down, never touched it again. Didn't touch it again for 20 plus years. Like, I did eventually cover it on the channel, I want to say in 2017, and I love this game now. This game is great. If there was a time where I would go back and revisit my childhood games and play them again. I used to do this all the time when I was a kid. I'd be like, oh, you know what? Zelda 2's too hard. Let's play it again in 2 years. And then I'd be like, wow, I've progressed so much. Like, it was a nice way of actually, yardsticking your progression in games and be like, wow, this game's not as hard at all. I'm much better at this. This is great. Unfortunately, during the great games divide of 1994 or 5, this was a game that I sacrificed to my older brother for something like Elevator Action, or more likely Maniac Mansion, something like that. Like a game that was his, but that I absolutely loved and could not be separated. Or like Spy vs. Spy. Love Spy vs. Spy. So I didn't have this. Had I had this, I likely would have played it again, understood it, and enjoyed it. Unfortunately, this just wasn't the case. We didn't have YouTube videos. We didn't have things where you could go up and look it up. Didn't have game facts or things where it could even explain how the game worked. And I probably was too young to really understand the manual. So it just kind of got lost in the scrap heap of games. But yeah, G.I. Joe, Real American Hero. Probably the first game I put down. This one, or Jaws, or Gremlins 2, or something like that. But we didn't sell it. We still hung on to it. So it's got that going for it. So I did like it enough not to get rid of it. All right, getting down to the last 3. So this one, oh God. Me and the Legend of Zelda series, from about Wind Waker till Breath of the Wild, was on more like Link Between Worlds, was on a downward trajectory. And it really came to a head with Skyward Sword. Now, I have played the remaster. I beat it for Hated Gems. That video came out, I want to say, last year. And maybe it was the year before. God, time is so fast now. God, but when I played this one, I had just beaten Twilight Princess, and I went to put this in. I got through the prologue, and I just noped the hell out. I just said, nah, I'm not doing this again. I never was a fan of the Wii waggle controls. I never bought a Wii. I am the biggest Nintendo fanboy you probably will find, even to this day, but the Wii is basically scorched earth for me. I have very few games that I have any interest in playing on the Wii. And Skyward Sword just didn't do it. Didn't enjoy it. Didn't enjoy the flying mechanics. Didn't enjoy the story mechanics. Didn't enjoy the fact that before the game came out, everyone was saying how this is the first Zelda game in the timeline. I get irritated when everything always needs to go back. I prefer it going forward. Or you know what? I don't even need to go forward. I could care less where it is on the timeline. Just make a good game. Because the problem, and this was what's funny with my review of actually playing through the damn thing, is the whole game still felt like, wow, if this is the first Zelda game, why does the sword already exist? It's just called something else. Okay, so when's the origin story of the Skyward Sword coming out? Then that'll be the first one. And why is there a kingdom that's already been destroyed, what, 100,000 years? It's just, you just had an excuse to put in a villain that wasn't Ganon for the first time, or so. It's an awful game. And this is one of the ones I wish I had stayed, not played. But Skyward Sword, yeah, that one still sucks. Last 2. This one might surprise you guys, especially if you've been watching my recent videos on these type of games. But this was probably the last one I picked up that I just didn't want to play. When I picked up my PS4, it was in 2014. I picked up the Destiny bundle, the white bundle, because I couldn't afford it in 2013. By this point, I'd been at my car sales job with Acura for about a year, and I was crushing it. Had money for the first time in my adult life that was coming in real to where I could actually make a purchase of this and not kill myself. And so one of the games I picked up was a release called Bloodborne. Now, I had played Demon's Souls on the PS3 and enjoyed it, but that's another story. And I hadn't played any of the Dark Souls, I don't think. No, I hadn't played 1, 2, or 3. I don't think 3 was out yet. I hadn't played 1 or 2. And so I picked up Bloodborne, and it's just not my style. I am not that, God, what do you call it? The Call of Cthulhu, the Lovecraftian, didn't really appeal to me that much. It felt so deliberate, but at the same time, I don't mind hard games, but at this point, I hadn't realized that you have to go in there and you have to find just a way to cheese the system or get through the system and then stick to it, and just never clicked. Never clicked like Sekiro. Sekiro really is the game that brought me around, and then Elden Ring really reinforced it. I always try and go back to play this. I just can't. I've installed it and then I've just stopped. I think at one time I turned it on because it is one of those games on the PS5 that's included with your PS Plus as one of those games that you can play. And I just can't. I still can't get into it. And I don't know if it's because I made it through the first several bosses. I want to say I'm on the second area, and it just didn't appeal to me as much. I don't know what it was, because I don't like that overwhelming gloom. The game Vampire kind of had that feel too, where as much as I think I'm going to like a 1920, 1910s Gothic-inspired area, I don't like living in that land for that much time, especially if not something this frustrating. I'm much more adept at doing that in something like Sekiro or Elden Ring. And last but not least, probably the game that's going to get me skewered the most by my RPG fans out there. I'm sorry, guys. Get ready for the hate, okay? So my last game here is one that I tried to do last year, and I was so much hype for it, and it even had a pixelized version of it to play that seemed like it'd be right up my alley, and that is Dragon Age 11. Not Dragon Age, Dragon Quest 11. Dragon Age, alrighty, get started. Dragon Quest 11. Now, before I had played this game, I had played Dragon Warrior on the NES, I want to say in 2020. I had an alright time, it wasn't great, but this game, jumped headlong into it, and it just never clicked. It's a turn-based game. You'd think I'd like it, but much like Bravely Default, I'm not a huge fan of this art style, especially on the Switch. This art style, this super bright, saturated art style, you see it in the Pokemon games, you see it in this, you see it in the Ys games, Xenoblade. I don't know. I'm Sensory Overload. I don't like it. And you know what? I'm not a huge fan of Akira Toriyama's art style. My buddy in high school tried to get me to like Dragon Ball Z, and all I saw was guys going like this for 30 minutes and nothing happened. And then I remember asking him, like, wait, that person's dead? And he'd be like, yeah, he's dead. Well, then why are they there? Oh, no, he's dead. I'm like, I still don't get it. And his art style is all like, why do you have potato people with eyes this close together next to, guys like regular looking people, and then super buxom ladies next to really, it's just all over the place. I need consistency. The same problem with Final Fantasy 12. Give me consistency. So, yeah. And then being able to see enemies on the field is both a plus and a negative. I'm finding this with Pokemon Scarlet or Pokemon Violet as well. Some of the joy in these grind-heavy games is not knowing who the enemy is until you get into the fight and be like, ooh, look, there's a new enemy. I might be on an island on this one, but I find the older I get, the more I find that, yeah, even though it's nice seeing the enemies on the field, I sometimes prefer it, because then it's like overwhelming. You walk into a room and like, God, there's 6 enemies here. Oh, I'm going to be in here forever. Instead of, even if that's the exact same case in a hallway, you get stopped every 3 seconds. I don't know what it is. Doesn't build as much. And I just didn't find it that enjoyable. I didn't like the combat. The story felt way too much like, oh, we're going after this magical branch. Oh, the magical branch was stolen by this king. Oh, this king needs you to win a race. Oh, you did win the race? Well, now you need to go take down this scorpion person. Oh, the scorpion person has been taken down? Okay, congratulations. By the way, we traded this off to someone's uncle 16 years ago. Yeah. So, those are 8 games that I gave up on. Let me know what you guys think of this list. Let me know if these are games that you guys have beaten and played. And if I'm wrong, if I should give one a second chance. I know there are some on this list that I did give a second chance and liked. And then some I didn't like. So, it's a little bit of everything. And let me know if you like this video. I have enough games to probably do 1 or 2 more of these if you enjoy it. As a reminder, I release videos every Tuesday. Everything I talk about is actually something written by me, and I enjoy and love video games, and I'd love to have you guys come by and talk about them with me. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.